conversations over the next couple of days about the college football playoff and what that might look like. And I know there's a lot of things tied to that with SEC schedules and whatnot. Do you have any things that you want to hear, questions that you want answered about, or what the college football playoff will look like from 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, I think I have a good understanding of where it is and the decisions that have to be made, which I don't think those decisions get answered here. I think we all think this is like, we're going to have these answers when we come out of it. There's a lot of thinking heads, a lot of people that have to come together, a lot of agreeing that has to be done to get where we want to go. I think we have a small sample size right now of what we did, and we're going to get another sample size right this year under the similar format, maybe a little different with the seeding part, but where it goes in the future, I don't know where that goes. And I'm not looking at it in a self-preservation mode, which happens a lot in college football. These meetings are that way, conferences are that way. I've learned from the best in the business that you're trying to constantly sustain the game and make the game better and not just do it for what's best for me or just for self-preservation. And I'm not saying that anybody is doing that, but I'm saying we got to look at it from that perspective. And that's hard. I look at women's softball, I look at men's basketball, and I look at men's baseball, and it just absolutely blows my mind how the SEC can end up with the teams they end up with in those positions. Okay, now some of those you can say are play-in because maybe they went through a regional, and you look at the women's softball World Series, you look at men's baseball, you look at men's basketball, 13 of 16, 14 of 16 in their larger pools. But when you look at what they're able to do, and there's no outcry, and there's nobody beating a drum saying that it's completely unfair. They do a lot of things based on RPI. They do a lot of things based on strength of schedule, and there are reward teams for that. I have a hard time seeing Ole Miss, Alabama, and South Carolina not being in the best teams last year, and that for me is a big part of the SEC. And people want to say, well, you need to play 9 games, you need to play 8 games. We don't really know which one of those is until we know the playoff format. But I beg everybody in this room the question: would we have been better off not playing Clemson last year and playing another SEC game to make 9 games? How would that have been better for the SEC? How would that have been better for Georgia? I don't think it would have. I think those teams you play outside your conference verify your strength.
Is it better for the game, though?
If what?
Like, if y'all play Clemson?
Well, I think it's better for the game to play Clemson, absolutely.
Right.
I think us playing Clemson did a lot of things for our conference, improved a lot of things for our conference. And, that's, people take that out of context. They look at it and say, all they want to talk about is the 8 to 9. I mean, who are you playing with those games?
Are you afraid those games could go away? Georgia, Clemson, Texas, Ohio State, those kind of games?
I think you're going to see more and more of those games, regardless of the SEC, because that's what the fan base wants, what TV wants. That drives revenue, and you're going to see lots of those opportunities out there.
Kirby, what was the biggest challenge building this program, and as a former Saban assistant, and what have you seen from Sarkisian? Because you guys have gone through similar things. He's trying to build something at Texas as well. What were those challenges as a head coach early on?
Yeah, continuity, keeping your staff intact. Very different environment that I started the Georgia program in and what Sark started in. The climate for college football just has changed, and it changed really fast. So it was different from when Nick started at Alabama and we were part of that staff to when I started at Georgia to now Sark well off at Texas doing a great job. It starts with getting good football players.
Kirby, you've coached an undefeated national championship team. Do you think in this current era of college football with a longer season, longer flow, do you think we'll see fewer undefeated national champions, or not necessarily? Do you think super teams could still rise up in this mode?
Yeah, I would like to say yes, you will see fewer, but I would say it's not because of the schedule and the length of the schedule. It would be because of the portal and the lack of depth and the more parity. But as soon as I say that, depends on which things go, way things go in the next 6 to 10 months, you could end up with some haves and have-nots out there, and ultimately a team could drive prices and go buy a championship. Like you're talking about with the super team. I think we could see that if there's not parity. We don't really know. know if there's gonna be or not.
On that note, obviously with the settlement, we don't really know, but how have you been dealing with sort of the number over 105? What have you been telling walk-ons? Have you already made decisions based on thinking the settlement's gonna go through, or what's the?
Yeah, we've been in communication. I think the number one thing when you deal with that situation is when you don't know, you tell somebody you don't know, and you tell them which way it's leaning, what we're hearing, and you prepare for that. We not only don't know that, we don't know what the camp number's gonna be. You know, we don't know who's gonna get to come back when school starts, who's gonna get to come back when camp starts. A lot of unknown in that. But we've been very honest with our guys and told them, and we told them that they were free to go in the portal, and some have looked out and realized that that's not necessarily the grass is greener, because there's not a lot of opportunities. Everybody's got a reduction of opportunities, so these kids that went in had very few places to go. So a lot of them have come back and looking for their opportunity to return, and we've prepared for that, and we're prepared to go either way in terms of that.
Kirby, you've talked about the value of conference championship games. They're thinking about this format where they either add to it with playing games or maybe blow it up. What are your thoughts? Is that as a just what's good for the game, and also just as a coach, like does it make the season even longer and all that?
You know, I don't know the formats they're talking about. A lot of this stuff I've heard about this team playing that team, crossing conferences within your conferences. I don't know. I know a lot of that's going to be determined by television revenue. What's best for that championship weekend? Is it a play-in game? Is it like your baseball, regional, your softball regionals, and you play and you try to get yourself in? I don't want to devalue the regular season. I do think there's a lot of value in the regular season. I don't think a team that, I guess Texas last year, right? They're the 1 seed going into the SEC championship. I mean, there's some scenarios out there. I'm like, okay, they got a play-in game. I don't know if I agree with that. They could play a championship game or they can play a game, but there should be some value to a regular season in terms of what you perform and what you do. You don't see a regular season basketball champion go in the SEC tournament, play, and then not make the tournament. I mean, it's not going to happen, right? So we have more limited spots than they do, but I enjoy the SEC championship. I'm a firm believer in that, but I'm going to support whatever's the conference we choose to do in that format.
On the portal window timing, Coach Elko was just in here and he made the point, he doesn't understand why anybody would want to look at a portal window after the spring rather than after the winter based on the professional models and what's worked. Where do you stand on that? And what would be the argument to do it after spring instead of the
Well,
winter?
I'm so glad you asked. I didn't get to talk to Elko. I was getting ready to talk to him. I did talk to Clark Lee. I think of this meeting, and I think everybody in this room is 8 or 9, SEC championship or not, settlement. The biggest decision that has to be made in college football right now, by far, to me, is when is the portal window and is there 1 or 2? Okay, that's not being decided by us today. A lot of people don't even know how it's getting decided, who's deciding it. But I need you to think for a second. There is a strong contingent. We had an AFCA meeting. We had a meeting in which we unanimously decided that there really needed to be 1 portal window. Whatever that is what it is. And it needs to happen sometime in January. There is an outcry. There is schools. There's different conferences that feel like it should not fall during the play-in season. I would love that. I would love to be able to play the season without it. Is basketball able to do that? Or do they deal with the portal during their championship?
During the tournament.
During the tournament.
Yeah.
What do we deal with during the final, let's call it maybe 4 teams? I don't know if I'm exactly right on that, but roughly we're down to 4. We deal with that. Okay, that's because of the academic calendar for us, where the academic calendar falls. And everybody doesn't have that incongruency. Oh, by the way, we had to deal with that multiple times. It's not fun. It's not fun. It's really hard to be playing in a championship setting and having to deal with that. But when I brought that up as a complaint or a problem, it was told to me, there's no crying from the eye. So if you're going to play in these environments, you have to be willing to do that. Now it's, we can't do that. And then I got told, well, we have a cap year. Cap year runs July 1 to June. If the portal is in January, we can't manage our cap. We can't do our cap. Well, that's an accounting method you got to take into account. Some schools are trying to manage that and prepare for that. Why can't you just change when the cap year is? Because the settlement is going to determine the cap year. And it's going to be based on all the other sports within our sports programs, which is July 1 to the end of June. So I'm a big believer in what Coach Elko said. And I want to develop my team. I think it's really important in football to have your team at whatever date in January, whatever we decide that is. And then you work those guys out, you train those guys, you lift, you prepare, you do meetings, you do all this preparation, and then that's your team, right? Like, that's your team. And I'm great with the money they make. I'm great with them being able to go in the portal. And if you ask kids when they would like to be able to go in the portal, they're going to say in January so they can go get started where? At their new place. But there's a large contingency that's growing now trying to push in April, portal, maybe May. They want to practice in June, have some practices in June. I want you to think about June for us. We have 10 days of high school camp in June. We believe in using those. Across the Southeast, we use 10 days. Some schools use 10, some don't use any. We also have official visits every weekend. So now we're going to practice our team in that same window. Something's going to suffer. Needless to say, I'm a proponent for a January, wherever it fits window. There's people saying, well, we can't get our kids in academically. Well, they're getting mid-year high school players in that same academic window. It's happening everywhere. So I'm a big believer in that. And I think that's the decision that has to be made, at least from a standpoint of SEC and bigger picture, the country. Where is the portal window, and is there two or is there one?
Kirby, when you were recruiting a player, did they ever ask you who your general manager is and what goes into structuring your organization, choosing not to have one?
No, nobody asked me who the general manager is. We introduce everybody to everybody in the organization, and we have people that fill that role. It may be 3-4 people, including myself, but we're very clear in the roles of our staff members and what they do. They learn that throughout the recruiting process, and we utilize those. But that's the only part you asked.
Just about how you structure, why you choose not to have that title.
Well, we do have that. I mean, we do have that. We have people that do that. What does a general manager do, in your mind?
I think it varies from organization to organization.
I agree. So we have people that do various things instead of pinpointing the general manager. Because I think if I ask every coach what their general manager does, they all do something different. So I mean, I can't figure out what you define it as. Because when you ask me what is a general manager, I want to know what you think it does. Because in the NFL they do different than what they do at our level.
Switch along the lines where you talked about the portal. How hectic was your December when you start thinking about signing day, transfer portal, SEC championship, playoffs? Like, how were you able to manage all those things?
A big staff. I mean, having a large staff. I mean, you can manage it, but we're not here to complain about that. Like, that's become the norm. Every time I come in here, we talk about December is absolutely crazy, right? Now, let's call it January, because hypothetically, the portal opened in December. We're leaning towards that thing being in January, and you get a little more stability in December in terms of, let's sign our high school recruits first. Then let's figure out in January where the semester break ends, who's staying and who's going. So we compartmentalize. Let's deal with this issue now. Let's deal with this issue now. But we're talking about taking this issue this January and moving it out all the way to April. You think tampering's a problem? Put that portal in April and see what teams do in January, February, and March. Just think about it now, because we're getting ready to make a big decision, and a lot of people believe, well, the kids won't be able to leave if we put it in April. They'll have to stay the next semester. Oh no, they'll be on your campus getting tampered with, collecting 33% of your cap before they leave with it. Not for that.
Who makes that decision, Kirby, on the portal? Like you said you didn't know. I'm just genuinely curious.
I think it'd be a great question to ask some people, but my opinion is an implementation committee, which comes from the settlement. Appointed 8 ADs, 2 from each Power 4 conference, who will hear the conference's perspective, and ultimately those 8 ADs, which are appointed, and they're kind of coming off of the settlement, will have to make a lot of implementation decisions that are not part of the settlement, the nuggets, let's call it. Here's the settlement, and then the nuggets are going to come from these 8 ADs, and that's very critical in my mind. It's not really talked about. Like, nobody's talking about the portal day. They just don't think it's a big deal. Is it 2? Is it 1? When is it?
You've had some pretty noteworthy quarterback competitions. I think you once famously said the plan is there is no plan. in terms of where you sit right now with your quarterback situation, how open is it after the spring?
Yeah, I'm excited about both those guys. They both played really well. They both done a great job, and they're both working their tails off. They're Georgia football players that love Georgia.